Now to the growing debate over the governor's plan to profile and relocate migrants from the southern border to other cities as a hedge, he says, against them coming to Florida. The growing debate gets more complicated than the headlines may indicate. The latest of lawsuit filings is by State Senator Jason Pizzo, but as a citizen and a taxpayer.
When a flight takes off from Texas and only stops temporarily in the state of Florida without allowing for disembarkation, or it's not a forced landing, that flight is still in flight. And you forced my hand to come to Tallahassee and tell you to stop.
Governor Ron DeSantis has defended not only the relocation plan, but the way it's being carried out. We asked him this week whether giving so-called sanctuary states advance notice of those arrivals might have mitigated the blowback.
Absolutely not. You know how I know that? Biden has dumped people all over the fruited plain. You have really serious things happening along the way to the border. Once they get in, are basically destitute in some parking lot. No one really cared about that on the national media perspective until 50 show up in Martha's Vineyard.
The first federal lawsuit filed this week by immigrant advocates in Massachusetts accuses the state of Florida, the governor, and the Department of Transportation, which administers the funding, of coercing and misleading and discriminating against the migrants for those trips. And that was filed by lawyers for civil rights in Boston. And the attorney is Oren Sellstrom, who is live with us right now. Oren, it's good to see you, and we do appreciate your time today.
Thank you for having me.
So we want to talk about a lawsuit in detail and go through that, and also about some confusion maybe in immigration policy and also the politics of all this, which is very important. So let's start with the lawsuit. Your lawsuit alleges that these migrants' rights were violated, federal rights were violated. Explain that.
That's correct. We filed a federal class action lawsuit this week against Governor DeSantis and his accomplices, challenging his illegal scheme to fraudulently induce a very vulnerable class of immigrants to cross state lines through false promises and misrepresentation.
So when you say, let's dig deep into that a little bit. When you say false promises, I think everyone who has been watching any of the news this week is well aware of pamphlets that were given out. The governor himself said he's had people on the ground in Texas profiling who might be coming to Florida. We've heard accounts of, you've heard accounts, and your attorneys have heard accounts firsthand from the migrants in Massachusetts about what they were told about housing and jobs. The governor had said that there were no specific promises made, rather that sanctuary states that they were going to, they were told, have more resources like those things to help them. So where is that line between lied to and sort of given an option?
Well, it is very clear in this case that Governor DeSantis and his accomplices were well across the line into deceit and misrepresentation. You have to remember that this group of immigrants is already in a highly vulnerable state. These are people that have fled persecution and violence in their home country, that have crossed Central America and Mexico, in most cases, largely on foot. They come to the United States as a place of refuge, turn themselves into federal immigration authorities who process them and release them. And it is then that Governor DeSantis's accomplices on the ground in Texas began preying on that very vulnerability and trying to build the trust that our clients had in them, giving them gift cards to McDonald's, for example, people who are desperately hungry. We had one client who, again, had walked across Mexico to reach the United States, and so his shoes were worn out. And this woman who identified herself as Perla, said she was just a good Samaritan, offered to buy him a new pair of shoes. So it was really insidious the way that Governor DeSantis's accomplices really worked to build trust in our clients, induce them to fly, and then, of course, it turned out to all be a political stunt.
So let me, the words political stunt have been used a lot. And let me just kind of point out the words that you're using, accomplices and insidious. They're very charged words that are in the lawsuit, and you are building your case, and we certainly appreciate that. But maybe let me just present some perceptions that I've heard from people who are supportive of this plan, in that, to your point, these migrants have been through hell on earth, jungles, and who knows, beatings. Some of them have talked about brutal beatings by smugglers or people taking advantage of them along the way. Here they land. They are homeless. They are destitute. They are waiting for asylum process with no resources. So what is wrong with the assistance that they got along that way?
So you're absolutely right in pointing out all of the vulnerabilities that this population has. So if people are in that situation, you don't lie to them, you don't deceive them, you don't tell them there are going to be jobs and there are going to be educational opportunities for their children, and there's going to be assistance with their immigration cases waiting for them if they board these flights. It's really insidious to build people's trust through that kind of false misrepresentation. Then they were flown to Martha's Vineyard, as you know. It was about 15 minutes before the plane was landing that they were told that they were not going to Boston or Washington, D.C. or any major metropolitan city, but they were instead going to go to an island that is only reachable by boat and airplane. Once the plane touched down, these people that had built trust in this very insidious way abandoned them at that point. They had given them, cell phone numbers to call when they were in Texas, saying, "We're good Samaritans. We just want to help you. There will be, services and jobs waiting for you on the other side." People started desperately calling once the plane landed, and no one was waiting for them, saying, "What's going on?" No one was on the other end of those lines anymore. Governor DeSantis and his accomplices had used them for political purposes, were done with them, and abandoned them at that point.
Let me ask you a question about that. The governor talked about, and we see in state records, there is a contractor being paid to handle the logistics of all of this. Might the governor himself have plausible deniability in the actions of the paid subcontractors? Might this lawsuit be better directed at the contractors working and actually doing those actions?
Well, we have sued both Governor DeSantis and his accomplices, but the liability runs straight to the top. This was Governor DeSantis's plan. He stood up the second the planes arrived and said, "I did this." So that is his responsibility, and it is his responsibility there was this fraud and misrepresentation that induced our clients to fly. He knew that there was no one waiting on the other side. He knew that this was intentionally planned so that there was no notice. So no, there is no deniability there. He took responsibility for that, and he's going to have to answer that in court.
We are talking to Oren Sellstrom, Lawyers for Civil Rights, on behalf of the Venezuelan migrants. We have some more questions for you. We will be back in a couple of minutes, so stay with us. We are back with Oren Sellstrom, Lawyers for Civil Rights in Boston, representing those Venezuelan migrants that were shipped to at first Martha's Vineyard and now are on Cape Cod. Oren, in the bigger picture of the immigration issue that this has brought so much light to, you can't ignore the numbers of migrants crossing the border in the past year have exploded, a record high. And I think there's a lot of confusion when this issue comes into play in the headlines. Who is legal and who is not? Those migrants presented themselves at the border, made asylum requests, yet others don't. Explain in sort of layman's terms, how is the border managed, and what rights do the people have when they come across?
Our clients did everything that they needed to do and were required to do under federal immigration law. You need to be in the United States to request asylum, and that is what they did. The federal immigration authorities processed them and released them, and they are legally authorized to be in the United States until their immigration proceedings unfold. So that is the status of our clients. And it was then, as I said, that the Governor DeSantis's accomplices preyed upon them and really exploited the very vulnerable situation that they were in order to induce them into this political stunt.
So when the governor refers to them as illegal aliens, technically and legally, that would not be a proper term to use. Is that right?
Well, that's not a proper legal term for anyone, but it is certainly the case that our clients and the class that we seek to represent are legally authorized to be in this country. And the federal government has said that unless and until there are immigration proceedings that say otherwise, they are legally authorized to be here. So it is really a case of state interference in federal immigration law, which is another problematic part of this entire stunt that we have raised in our lawsuit that was filed this week.
And in the numbers of migrants who are coming over, who might be doing it properly, who might be requesting asylum, is there, you are part of the infrastructure of immigration law and asylum seeking. Is it tenable now in the United States? Is it doable with so many people requesting asylum?
There are many people across the political spectrum who believe that immigration reform is necessary, that there need to be, for example, more pathways to citizenship. But the way to have that conversation is not to use human beings as political props to make a point, to start the conversation. That is what is so appalling about what Governor DeSantis has done. And we have heard from people all across the country, across the political spectrum, who share that view, who really object to the idea that this was using human beings as props, as objects, denying their humanity. If we're going to have a conversation about immigration and immigration reform in this country, it's got to start from a place of humanity, from recognizing that people are people. And that is what is so objectionable about this political stunt that Ron DeSantis pulled in the last week and a half, and why we felt it was necessary to go to federal court to stop this from happening again in the future.
Oren Sellstrom, Lawyers for Civil Rights in Boston, representing the Venezuelan migrants. We appreciate your time. Thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.